Hey everybody, thank you so much for showing up to this channel. Episode 2 of Strong Arms, where I'm starting a conversation for mental health community workers and for clients or anyone who would like to share the struggles or strengths in mental health skills work or anything like that. The first topic that I thought would be worth discussing for mental health practitioners or clients interested in mental health work in the community is, I think, do no harm. I like the play on words of no. We really can only prevent poor actions or poor decisions that we can see. So this is the way that I would organize my thought in the field to have this primary focus of doing no harm. This is a great job because it's so meaningful. This is a great place to put effort. It's wonderful for the person doing the work, and hopefully it's a benefit to the community and to the people being served. And so with that as paramount, how can we do great work and do no harm? Up here I have do your role and do it well. Know what you're there for. Wear the right hat. If you're the fireman, put out the fire. If you're the attorney, turn the affidavits in on time. And if you're the mental health skills worker, focus on skills, focus on barriers today, and in my opinion, let's talk about it. I would love it if we did, but in my opinion, this is a good way, as I'll discuss these 3 points, of how to focus on doing a great, excellent job and doing no harm in such an independent role as being a mental health worker in the field alone in a client's home, where you really need to know your advocacy, your mindset, what you're there to do, and how to stay organized and focused so that you can achieve that goal safely. So my number one bias about where things should start is with safety. I would break this into these 3 areas. Every time we start with a new client, we want to understand their relationship with their own safety and their own self-care. Ultimately, with clients that are in high risk, we would do a safety check every session when we start. Are you safe for today? Are you willing and able to conduct appropriate self-care? Just to stay safe today. A basic check for anyone, or an initial check when you are dealing with clients that let you know that suicidality is never part of their life. But an initial check when you meet them, and occasional check-ins that are appropriate, deemed by your relationship that you build, of good, careful conversations with clients about suicidality, self-harm, and how their safety plays out in their lives. So along with that, every client would have a normal routine of safety check that you would do before we start our work. And we'd refer to the safety plan in place before we start and when we leave. And we'd create that plan in a very positive, skills-based session when we first get started. That's just how I love to do it, and I would just love to hear how other people focus their work and what they start from. But this is, I think, something that is that's how we would know that we first do no harm, is that we don't ignore anything, that we would have the best ability to address, and we're the person showing up to do the role that would be best responsible, other than the person themselves, to catch these things and not let anything slip. So if we start with safety, We follow these things. We know our client, we create a plan that we refer to, and we prevent crisis with the skills work knowledge that we know and with the suggestions and the rapport that we build. I love that, and I would love to hear different ways that you as clinicians or you as clients communicate about this, the languages that you have with yourself and with your clients about this this process that helps us stay here, to do the work and to start to feel better. But we have to know that we're going to be here together, and we're going to show up to do that, and how. So number 1, safety. Number 2, how can we do this work, do no harm, but work with such an important thing as the self, as the human being sense of self? I think that we do that with a focus on the client. And that's not that we put, ourselves at risk. We maintain our own sense of self, but we keep our ego in check. This work is from a client perspective. If it's going to help a client feel that their life has added meaning, added function, and that we're doing a positive benefit by knowing each other and by engaging in this effort. We focus on building a client's self-esteem and empowerment. And if we know what our own bias is about right, wrong, for ourselves, and we are happy and we have a good sense of self, then we can do this. Or if we know where we're struggling and we caretake to that before we show up. But I just think it's worth saying at no time are we there to do the work of challenging, which we must do for clients, just things where we help someone hold themselves accountable for change and development. We don't ever do that in a way that doesn't build up their self-esteem. There's no time where I want to speak to a client in a way that makes them feel worse about themselves. And I know it's obvious. Some of these things are very obvious, but it's a very good place to start about talking about the conversation about what a great session looks like that builds strength, resiliency, and meaning in a client's life. And that's what we're here to do. So, are we safe for today? Do we know what that looks like? Do we know our client? Do they know that we care? Do they know that we're a safe place to talk about safety? Do we know our client? Do we know ourselves? Do we give ourselves compassion and love and empathy and care so that we can keep our ego in check and we can show our clients the best version of themselves through our eyes? That's a wonderful skill too. I think it might even be mandatory to try and find one thing that you can just really see as wisdom, beauty, strength, resiliency, just a great, admirable thing in your client. If you can't do that, it would never be a situation where you let them know that, right? So maybe if it's not a good match, it's not a good match. And having the skill to support a client and support their sense of self and value as a person, but also perhaps discontinue care, like that all falls under this area. And I just believe it's so vital to have this as step 2. Empowerment of their self. What does it look like for them to be free? What does it look like for them to be functioning in an excellent manner? What does it look like for them to have relationships that they love? What does vocation look like for them? These are measured by the client, not by us. And the last, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Information can come into us. We get we need to. We need to be wonderful listeners. We need to be absolutely amazing at synthesizing information because we care about it and we want to know and we want to use that for the betterment of our client. But information absolutely does not go out. This is a one-way street. Information comes in, and I don't believe it should go out. And I think that the ways that we must share information need to be one of our most thoughtful and stringent areas of our professional work, where in one hand, if it wasn't documented, it did not happen. And sessions and events, so many things, they need to be documented, but they need to be documented in the best interest of the client, never with a false slant and never with a slant that advantages the clinician. And that really should go without saying, but also with a mindfulness to all the nuances that the paperwork that we create in this role can have on a person's life, like all the impact that the paper trails that we write can have on our client. It's not about how we're feeling about ourselves. It's about how documenting the process of skills building for this client will help their sense of self. Paperwork is not to complain about clients, and neither is clinical supervision. Paperwork is not there to complain about clients. So I would love to talk more about clinical supervision. I'm just scribbling out a few of the focus points that I think are very helpful. But I'm very, very curious how other clinicians in the field manage this responsibility. Because we have clinical supervision. Perhaps you have it once a week, or perhaps you have a longer session once a month. But in the day-to-day, you have to be the ethical one showing up for this role. You have to be the one who is assessing your client in their home and seeing the subtle changes that might imply that you need an update on your habits of checking in, or the ways that you prevent distress that builds up towards crisis, and getting ever better at that, and making the safety planning a really meaningful rapport building point where you communicate the value of this person, how valuable they are, how much they should value themselves. This all flows really well into each other, and especially in rapport building, if they know that we would speak about our client in clinical review or anywhere the same as if they were sitting in that room with you. That the way we talk about them is handled very carefully, very minimally, and only for the betterment of their sense of self. Building up our clients, you should know and you should hear from someone that you trust that the way they talk about you, the way they work for you, it's all to build you up. And that there's some sort of organizational flow within this person of how they're going to show up, do excellent care for you, and to do no harm. And that they know how they're gonna do that. So let's do our roles. Let's do it well. Let's know what we're doing, why we're doing it. Let's do it out of love, because if we do it right, it's so meaningful, and we get so much. So thanks, guys.